In this week's news, Child Abuse Commissioner addresses church leaders as the inquiry rolls on. Christian agencies pitch in with Europe's migrant crisis. And a non-stop prayer movement in officially atheist China.
This is InFocus Christian News and Current Affairs.
Hello, it's great you could join us this week. Today on InFocus, we'll investigate an often overlooked variety of religious violence, Buddhist extremism. Trafford Fisher will answer the question, how do you know when your child's ready for school? And I'm looking forward to meeting Grace MacLean, who I think has been through the experience many of us have had when what we thought was God's plan for us seems to just crash and burn. How do you pick yourself up from that, Sibel?
It's tough, isn't it?
Yeah.
You feel like you're going nowhere and everyone else is still moving.
Yeah.
Ready for the news?
Or yours, Sibel?
The head of the Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Sexual Abuse has addressed Australia's National Council of Churches, outlining the Commission's progress and recommendations already made. Justice Peter MacLean noted the positive changes religious organisations have begun to make in response to the Royal Commission, but said that there needed to be a decided break with the traditional belief that children should be seen and not heard. The Commissioner gave a breakdown of the more than 16,000 allegations of abuse that have been made to the Royal Commission. 43% of these allegations have been directly linked to religious organisations, the Catholic Church foremost amongst them. Over the next 2 months, public hearings will commence into alleged abuses at Salvation Army and Melbourne Catholic institutions. The Royal Commission has not made its hearing schedule public beyond November. Justice MacLean said, however, that the Commission is due to complete its work by the end of 2017. The former head of an established Catholic order has been sentenced to prison for 4 years for common and indecent assaults on school students in the 1970s and 1980s. According to The Age, Julian Benedict Fox held senior roles at 2 Victorian colleges and misused his authority as disciplinarian to abuse the boys. In 1988, he was appointed head of the Salesians in Australia, an order devoted to the education and welfare of young people, particularly those who are disadvantaged. After allegations of the abuse came to light, Fox moved overseas for some years, but returned in 2013 to face criminal charges. New research from the University of Queensland suggests that women who drink alcohol around the time of conception may be increasing their child's risk of developing obesity and diabetes in later life. The study of laboratory rats found that it only took the rat equivalent of 5 standard drinks at the time of conception to produce offspring that struggled to properly regulate their blood sugar. In the light of statistics that show 50% of pregnancies are unplanned, an alcohol-free lifestyle as recommended by a number of religious groups may be the only safe way to go.
It is an animal study, there's no question about that. However, it's one more piece of the jigsaw puzzle that shows us over and over again the detrimental damage that alcohol does to the human body in so many different ways.
Christian organisations across Europe are pitching in to help as floods of migrants stream across or settle in their territory. Anglican churches have been conducting fundraising drives, and World Vision is on the ground in Serbia near the Hungarian border. The Adventist Development and Relief Agency, or ADRA, has been collecting food, clothes and other emergency supplies for newly arrived refugees in southern Europe, including 12.5 tons of donations for the crowds gathering on the Greek island of Lesbos. Local congregations are helping too, with some making church buildings available as emergency accommodation. Pope Francis has called on every Catholic parish and religious community in Europe to host a migrant family, saying that he'll lead the way by putting up 2 families at the Vatican. Meanwhile, Christians unable or unwilling to leave parts of Syria occupied by ISIS continue to face life and death choices. According to Christian Today, 250 Christians remaining in the town of Kiratiyan have been told they must not worship or display crosses publicly. They'll also need to pay a protection tax to ISIS. Most Syrian Christians from occupied areas have fled. According to the Catholic Herald, of the 1.2 million Christians living in the country before the civil war broke out in 2011, 450,000 have now left their homes. Syrian Catholic leaders fear that Christian numbers in the region will drop so low as to make the church unviable. They're begging for young Christians in particular to stay. Encouraged by European nations' generosity towards Syrian refugees, a church leader in Pakistan has written to the world's politicians asking them to open their hearts to Pakistani Christian asylum seekers. Dr. Nazir Bhatti, who heads up the Pakistan Christian Congress, says persecuted Pakistani Christians have been waiting for years in Sri Lanka, Malaysia, Thailand and other Southeast Asian countries for the United Nations to process their asylum claims. According to the Daily Pakistan, Dr. Bhatti is asking for a similar fast-tracking process currently being applied to Syrian asylum seekers by European countries, the US, Australia and elsewhere, to be made available to Pakistani Christians. For the last 6 years, Christians in northeast China have been involved in a non-stop prayer relay, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. According to CBN News, the prayer centre started June 2009. Since then, 617 churches from across China have signed up to pray 24 hours a day. The leaders of the prayer ministry say their purpose for the centre is for people to be able to reconcile with God, with other churches and with each other. The prayer centre has also opened a ministry school, which is training men and women to continue spreading the gospel. Although the United States presidential election is still more than a year away, there's plenty of commentary on the candidates. Among the Republican nominees, surprisingly, it's the two non-politicians who are ahead in the opinion polls. And according to a report by Christian Post, their religious beliefs have been part of the public discussion. Outspoken businessman Donald Trump says that he believes in God and that the Bible is his favourite book. However, when put on the spot, he declined to nominate his favourite Bible verse. Retired neurosurgeon Ben Carson has no problem quoting the Bible, but his religious identity as a Seventh-day Adventist has prompted a number of critical articles in mainstream media. It seems some pastors will do just about anything to raise funds for a worthy cause, if a Good News Network story from Nashville, Tennessee is any indication. Reverend Jeff Carr spent 45 days living in a tiny home that fits on the back of a trailer, vowing that he'd stay there until he'd raised $50,000. His efforts were successful. He used the money to build some more of the micro-houses that are now parked on church property and provide accommodation for a number of homeless people.
This is so cool. I mean, people are living in them and they get to stay in those. Yeah.
And that's this week's news. I imagine you could do with one of those tiny houses, Kent. It's certainly a step up from the doghouse.
Ooh, I have no idea what you're talking about, Sibel. Hey, stay with us. I'll be back in just a moment with James Standish and Freedom in Focus.
Travel back in time to ancient civilizations with Archaeological Diggings digital magazine. In this issue, we find out who were those lesser-known female pharaohs. Also, we follow an expert through London's antiquities shops on the hunt for contraband artefacts and turn-up relics, the product of ISIS looters. And we look at the origins of the Silk Road and visit Palmyra, its western terminus. Don't miss an issue. Subscribe online or ask for Archaeological Diggings at your local newsagent.
Hi, welcome back, and it's great to have our human rights and religious freedom guy in the studio again, James Standish. How are you, James?
Great to be back, Kent.
Now, James, we hear a lot of talk in the media and I guess in the comments under the articles online about religion and violence, and often the focus is on Islam, often it's on Christianity.
Sure.
What it's usually not on is Buddhism. But that's not an entirely accurate perception, is it?
Well, unfortunately, violence is associated with the human condition. And it doesn't matter if you're secularist, if you're Christian, if you're Muslim, if you're Buddhist, if you're Hindu, etc. or Sikh. It doesn't matter which religious tradition you're looking at, particularly one that has some serious history.
But James, Buddhism does have a particular association with being peaceful, with being compassionate. Is that not the man with the orange tie? You should know.
Well, you know, I grew up in Asia, so of course I've lived in a majority Buddhist cultures, and the truth is, well, I've lived in Thailand. Thailand has a murder rate that's 5 times higher than Australia. So when
okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so when we come to sort of talking about these stereotypes, I think that there's a disconnect between what people sometimes aspire to and what they actually do, and that's the case, as I said, across the board. That doesn't mean that the aspirations aren't worthy. One of the principles of Buddhism is don't kill. That's why a lot of Buddhists, or at least some Buddhists, are vegetarian, because they take that principle broadly. Of course, most aren't vegetarian. But there's also traditions of warrior monks in Japan. There's traditions of justifying, of looking at violence and asking what violence is justified and what isn't, just like there is in Christianity.
Sure, the just war doctrine.
The just war idea. And in addition, of course, there's the confluence of religion and nationalism. And that's what we're seeing in Myanmar right now, where the ruling military has taken Buddhism as part of their national identity, and of course, as part of that, has unleashed some fairly significant violence against the Muslim minority there.
It's not just the military, though, is it? I mean, we also had this nationalist Buddhist monk movement.
Well, that's exactly right. But those two things are not independent. In other words, the nationalism, the monks that are nationalists have the approval of the military and so forth. So there's this symbiotic relationship, just like there has been at times past in Christianity, just like there has been and is now in Islam.
So in Myanmar, or Burma if you prefer, we have this situation where the people who we think would be the most peaceful, the Buddhists, are actually hassling the Muslims, the Rohingya Muslims, which are often seen to be on the other side of
that's right, and they'd have their justifications, just like there always are with ethno-religious or these kinds of conflicts. The point is this, though, Ken, I think the takeaway point is don't look at religions in a stereotypical perspective, and also don't expect that everyone who adheres to a religion to adhere to it in the purest form. The reality is, no matter what faith you aspire to, whether it's the Buddhist path or whatever it is, in my case, Christianity, the reality is that the impulses that we all have as humans, because we're sinful, we're fallen, we're broken in a sense, is towards violence, is towards being unkind to others. It is not turning the other cheek or all those sorts of principles.
It's about power and domination, isn't it?
And when we and when we see it in ourselves or in others, recognize it for what it is. It's not Buddhism that's the problem in this particular case, or even in other cases, Christianity, or even atheism, although all of these philosophies have natural outworkings. But nonetheless, look at it for what it is, and that is a human condition, and look to combat it, not by dissing someone's faith, but by appealing and dealing with the root problem, which is, of course, a broken human nature, and of course, we have to work against any kind of inclinations towards this within our own communities.
Well, human to human, it's an important way to see other people, isn't it?
It's absolutely critical, rather than than the typical thing where we write off religion, but as soon as you do that, then you look at the history of agnosticism or atheism. It's even worse. So there's violence wherever you look.
That's right. Yeah. Hey, thanks so much for those insights, James. I really appreciate your time this week.
It's a pleasure.
And now it's time for Family in Focus.
Hi and welcome to Family in Focus. I'm Monica Galash and I'm here with Trafford Fisher. Trafford, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
That's good to hear. Trafford, I have a friend who has a very intelligent 4-year-old. She's so smart, sometimes I think she's actually smarter than me.
Okay.
She knows all her timetables, I think I've forgotten all of mine. But my friend is convinced that she's actually ready for school at the age of 4. Is this a good or a bad idea for a 4-year-old? Is she actually ready for school?
Traditionally, we would say yes. In the past, we'd say, yep, she's as I said, she's book smart, she knows the timetables ready. But the research is suggesting otherwise. Let me just read you for some research. It says preschool skill-based assessment of children's functioning have been shown to be poor predictors of subsequent school adjustment and behaviour.
Wow.
Study in 2003. So what I think they're suggesting is that if we just base it on that alone, we're taking a bit of a risk.
Okay.
We've got to go broader. And the same research suggested that school readiness does not reside solely in the child. Now that's what we're looking at. It doesn't just, yep, they're ready because we're looking at the child. It says reflects the environments in which children find themselves.
So what other factors are included in this readiness for school?
So what they're suggesting, it's about the home, the community, the childhood services and the school they're going to.
Okay.
So they're saying they've got this little equation, right? Ready families, ready communities, ready childhood services, ready schools, ready child.
Wow. Okay.
I think what they're saying, Monica, is that if we just look at the child itself and we say, yep, it's ready, it's not a good predictor of future. It might look good, but see, what about the emotional readiness of a child? What about the social ability? How's she going to deal with bullying? Is she a bit bullying? Is she a bit bossy? Is he a bit bossy?
So these are the things that an adult can be looking for in their child. Like, are they bossy? Are they handling their emotions well?
Yeah. Are they socialised? What sort of family? How has the family itself modelled readiness to go out and leave the home? So are they able to cope with stress? Remembering they're a kid, how can they do that well? Is the school they're going to able to adapt to the various needs of a kid, or is it very structured on academic and not other social and emotional issues? Is the preschool the child's currently, and if they're at preschool, is that also helping to get this child ready? So what they're saying, it says here, the interaction between and cumulative effect of all these influences determines the extent to which the child is ready. And I think it just reminds, if mum and dads are out there listening, I think we encourage to say, look, don't just look at the child itself, that little boy, little girl, is the child ready? He or she may look as if they're ready, but is the school ready? Is the home ready for this change? And what other things have they been looking more than just books?
Okay, wow.
Package deal.
Wow, well, I hope they're all ready one stage or another. Thank you so much, Trafford.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. We'll be right back after the break.
Signs of the Times, a magazine for a world on the brink. And this month in Signs, God's 10 Commandments, the only lasting solution to the world's chaos. How you can improve your health day after day after day. What would society be like if Christianity didn't exist? Discovering what happens in the time immediately following Christ's return. All in this month's Signs of the Times. Subscribe to Signs today and change your life.
Hi, welcome back. Well, have you ever been in that situation where you just knew that God had this plan for your life, but suddenly it all falls into a screaming heap? Well, Grace MacLean has been there, haven't you, Grace?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, you were only 19 years old, a baby Christian, and you had this incredible opportunity to go to America and minister. I mean, someone must have seen some potential in you.
Well, step back. I became a Christian at 19, so the only Christian in my family, and I had, moved to Perth and became a Christian, and then I was in ministry for about 3 years. So when I became a Christian, I saw someone and I was like, yep. He was preaching, and I looked at him and said, that's what I want to be. That's my life calling. Just straight into it. Straight into it, and I did a whole bunch of things. I was a youth leader and an assistant chaplain for about 3 years. As I was kind of learning to be a Christian, and it kind of all happened very quickly, which often it does when you, I guess, if you feel that that's your calling. And then when I was 23, I got an opportunity where I was flown to America to find out if I could work over there as a missionary for 12 months. So I got flown over. If I was meant to be there, then I could stay. If I didn't, I could come back and get on with my job where I was.
So you were going to be there to sort of help the pastor out and sort of observe and learn, be mentored and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So that stage I'd been a Christian for 3 years, and or just over 3 years, and it was, for me, I hadn't studied theology. I hadn't even finished high school, to be honest. So I hadn't gone and done theology, and I was doing missionary work and felt that ministry was my calling. So America's a big place where you kind of get a lot of inspiration, and there's a fair bit of spirituality that flows around in and out of everything over there. And
okay, so you got off the plane on what date was it?
It was the 5th of September.
The 5th of September.
Yep.
What year?
2001.
Okay, now if you do some maths there.
So the first day of work was September 11.
Wow. Your first day of work was September 11. Yep. So, and in America, obviously, it's a big deal here in Australia.
Absolutely.
What was that like in America?
Very overwhelming. You had flags everywhere. You had, everything was being threatened, so bombs. So you would go to the stationery store and they'd close off the car park because there was a bomb threat. You would, all the different major theme parks or studios were under threat for being bombed. So everything was
locked down.
Absolutely.
And paranoia, security
absolutely.
everywhere.
And then there was anthrax, so the whole anthrax thing was coming out.
Anthrax in the envelopes,
yes.
Yeah,
so that was all happening at the same time.
So mail was suspect. Public areas were suspect.
Yep. Yeah, so there was a fair bit of that going on, and when any major world problem happens, we all turn to the apocalypse and last end of times and all that sort of stuff. So that was all going on as well in the background. And
in the middle of all this, just I guess the people in the church you were working with and people generally in the public would have been asking a lot of questions, having a lot of spiritual, difficulties and crises and that sort of stuff. And it was at that point that the pastor you were working with said, you know what? I'm actually struggling with some stuff, some personal stuff, and I don't think I can do this anymore. It's great you're here, Grace. You can take over the church for me. How did that feel?
Well, that was actually also the first day of work. So the pastor had been going through some stuff himself, and I think he thought when I was coming over that would help him. And when in fact, you can't help anyone else. Everyone sort of really has to help themselves. So when I got there, it was like a really fresh, new face that could actually just take over. That's what he thought. So away went my mentoring, and he just said, there were 2 churches, but I got a church that had 18 to 35-year-olds, and there was about 30 to 40 of them, and they were then, for that group of people, I was responsible for the church.
Wow. Okay. So how long were you working in that church? Pretty much
15 months.
Pretty much unsupported with.
I actually was supported by a different church, which was quite interesting. So there was a group of people that came and met at the church, and they often said, "Oh, we came to get you." So they had met twice at our church. Okay.
So after 15 months of ministry, how were you feeling emotionally and spiritually?
I had nothing. I was less than nothing. So I came home. And lived back on the East Coast. So I had been in the West Coast and came back to live with my sisters and my mum on the East Coast. And I couldn't open my Bible. I didn't want a bar of it. Was really angry with God, and
Why was that?
I think it's quite. You go and you do something and you're so young, and that's the first place that you go. Like, I was there, I was called to do your work, and I'm doing your work, and I've been hit with September 11. Like, I know the world was hit with September 11. It's not about me, but...
it always seems personal, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, what was I supposed to do then? Like, you're supposed to look after me. You're supposed to be my carer. You're supposed to be the numero uno. But there was a fair few lessons, I think, that have come through from that.
Well, tell me, what are the lessons?
I think, it's seeing where God is and not where he isn't. So I've had that over my life. So, bringing that group of people to come and get me, so to speak. He was there in that. And I actually recently got to go back to where I was and had a moment back at the church that I worked for, and just got to reflect on all the beauty that he had actually put into place around that whole situation. So there was just some things of looking at where he is and not where he isn't, because often we blame him, but there's a fair few elements that are going on in and around us that we don't see that I think we forget and we get bombarded with.
Yeah,
it's easier to think negatively than it is to think positively.
Yeah, wow. Now, you're doing some incredible work now in the area of not-for-profits and fundraising. And in fact, you've even been given the award of Citizen of the Year for the Lake Macquarie region, which is where I live too. So that's really good. And before that, it was Young Business Person of the Year, that's right?
Yeah.
Which is incredible. So this seems like God is indeed blessing you, and he does indeed have a plan for you, but it's not in the area of church ministry. Is that the way you feel about it?
I think when I came back, I realised, you know, because when I came back from Hollywood, I had to go and work somewhere that I didn't have to think about anything. I worked for an accounting firm, and you know, I had to not think about it. And it was then that I realised that you can be anywhere doing ministry. So it doesn't matter. Ministry is about the people that you help and supporting the people around you and noticing the people that are around you and giving God or God using you to be hopeful in those lives. Like if you just look around, hope is needed everywhere. And I think that was the biggest thing that I learnt coming back from the battle that I had within myself from Hollywood. But yeah, so now it's really about, I felt that it was an accident, but maybe it's God's divine plan, whatever you want to call it. But it's helping people on a greater scale, and it's very much, it's still bringing hope to people. It's mentoring and supporting, and you know, for those people in the not-for-profit space who struggle a lot with that.
Wow. And you did end up opening your Bible again. You said you couldn't open it for a while. There's a particular verse that you said it has really sort of helped you make sense of all this.
Yes. Romans 8:28, for we know that through all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. So that was the one that I would hold on to, in saying that, you know what, God, I don't understand your plan, and I don't know what you're doing, or I don't get it, but you're big enough and scary enough and ugly enough to manage all the stuff that's going on in my life. And, you know, you promised this, and that's what I'm going to hold on to. So.
Yeah, wow. Well, it's an incredible journey that you've been through, Grace, and obviously I'm sure God's not finished with you yet. Got many more lessons for you to learn, but thanks so much for, you know, just sharing that part of your story with us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be back straight after the break.
Planning your future can be a daunting task. What you want to do, who you want to be, and the road ahead can often be unpredictable. No one really knows what the future holds. That's just part of what makes it all so amazing. And that's why a great education matters. Because it doesn't just help you get a great job. It helps you prepare for what life can throw at you and live a great life. Avondale. It's education designed for life.
Hello. Well, Kent, it's been another great week on InFocus, hasn't it?
Oh, well, of course. I mean, you know, once you start the program with Sabelle Couttet reading the news, well, you know, you've set the tone, haven't you? You know, you've sort of, you know, set the standard. So from that point, quite naturally, it's going to be quality, quality, quality.
Well, it's nice to be appreciated. What kind of pay rise should I be expecting?
Look, Sabelle, we really don't have much time for chit-chat today. We need to wrap things up for this week.
I see. Well, don't forget to visit us on the web and leave a comment via social media. Our website is, of course, record.net.au, and assuming my pay negotiations produce a satisfactory result, we'll see you next time.
All the best.